Hello, 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 and welcome to the Divine Direction Author Interview Series. I am Benicia Ponder, founder of InspirationalAuthors.com, and I have the pleasure today of speaking to Patricia Ortega, one of our co-authors in the Divine Direction book project. Patricia!
Hey, it's good to be with everybody.
Yes, yes, yes. This author interview series is really about highlighting, spotlighting some of the amazing co authors from the Divine Direction Book Project. And I just think that you all are so amazing. I want to share you with as many people as possible because through this project, you all gave me as the collaborator, you gave me so much hope and inspiration. And I just can't help but to share you all. So, Patricia, tell our community what you want us to know about you.
Yeah, I mean, before I get started, I just want you to know like the message that you gave each of us, like just the ability to kind of have our story shared and to come together in an anthology and have so many awesome stories, so many awesome authors come together. I don't know, it was just there's something about it, about the fact that you've made something from nothing, and it just is starting to kind of like take on a life of its own. So I just want to thank you for that.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. I was so like, I've got to tell her this. But tell me the question one more time.
No, and that's totally fine because when you say something out of nothing, literally, I had the idea for bringing together inspirational authors to share their stories. That's what I do is help people share their stories. And I just had this idea. I want to do a collaboration. And when you say nothing, all I had was the idea.
Oh, it's so
I didn't
cool.
even have the title. I didn't have any of that. I put it out and said, we're going to do a collection of inspirational devotionals that will uplift the spirit and give inspiration and hope. And it wasn't until I received the contributions from each of the co-authors that I saw the theme that God really spoke to me. It's like, okay, divine direction. The title did not come until after I'd received all of the submissions. I was
So
really going
cool.
to name the collaboration Inspirational Devotionals, if you want to know the truth. I was just going to say Inspirational Devotional,
You're like, this is
but
what it is. This is what I'm naming it.
exactly right. But God spoke so much through the project, and it was divine direction. Each story talked about that, about how God shows up and works. So, with that being said, my question was,
Yeah.
what do you want the community to know about you? Since you are so amazing, I mean, yeah, I just want you to tell them what you want us to know about you.
Gosh, that's one of like, it's like that interview questions. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm like,
Right.
I wasn't ready. No. Honestly, probably the biggest thing is that I'm in this big transition. And the big thing I'm doing right now is, not to necessarily put in a shameless plug or anything, but I'm coming out of the employee world and going into the online business world. And it's this mindset shift. Oh my gosh, it is a
Yeah.
huge mindset shift. And
Yeah.
it reminded me of the mindset shift that I took when I first started figuring out how to do well in job interviews and all that kind of stuff. And so I am working on the career side of the online business aspect. So obviously, career coaching, like that's my thing, right? But I'm going through the same mindset, like transformation. Like I have my really, really rough days where I'm just like, what the heck is going on? I can't record anything. I can't put anything out there. I'm not good enough, blah, blah, blah. And then there's days where I'm like, yes, let's do it. Let's go after it. I record all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff. It all goes well. And so, honestly, what's happening with me is that same mindset shift that I'm coaching my folks through in the career coaching. I'm kind of going through that myself. So it's been
Mhm.
really nice. And then on the business side, um, similar to how the story alludes in Divine Direction, I'm putting together the Uncommon Career Academy course so that I can walk folks through both the mindset and the practicalities of the career search, navigation, and all of that. So, in a nutshell, that's kind of I guess, the emphasis or what I'm focusing on right now.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you are in that. that period of transition. So many opportunities are in those transition periods. And especially now, you're in that career field where you're helping people to understand how to navigate the twists and the turns. I can only imagine that after we had this whole pandemic era of living, that there are so many changes in how employees and employers relate to each other, how you find jobs, whether or not you even want to work in a 9 to 5 anymore, because so many people are determining, hey, you know what, it's not worth it to be so stressed anymore. So how do you help people to even begin? Yeah, I want to start with that question because three questions came to my mind. But how do you help people to even begin um, to navigate that?
Yeah, but this is like falling right up my alley. So the biggest thing is, I taught career classes for a good amount of time.
Mhm.
And in those career classes, there was all this emphasis on the academic side. Learn all the theories of career development, and not enough emphasis on the resume, how to interview, the career savviness, the piece that actually gets you to move up in the world. And then when I came out of education and I started looking at, what's going on in the career coaching world, a lot of it is focused so much on getting the job, on the resume, the interview. And of course, I was like, this is a breath of fresh air. Everything that I wanted to teach more on in the university and the college setting is, in the coaching world. But then I realized, well, no one's really teaching both. Like when you see the career clarity or the decision making exploration portion, it's always like a side note, like, oh, by the way, make sure you're clear in your direction. And so one of the things that I want to make sure and kind of put out, and the most important thing is getting that career clarity and figuring out, why are you not happy in your job? Or why do you feel like you want to make a transition? And, in some ways it's like, no, just go straight for the resume because you've got, like you sell the course or whatever. But at the end of the day, there are going to be some folks who really genuinely, they love their careers. They're just in a bad fit season, environment, or yeah, maybe they could be in a bad fit job. So a lot of it has to do with like the fit of the position, and assessing why it is that you want to make a change is probably the most important piece. And then if it turns out that, hey, it's a career change that we actually need, then yeah, let's go ahead and move on through the process. But I don't know. I think it's just this really big disservice um, to basically say, hey, go through this, career transition. Let me support you through this career transition without me knowing what I know, without me saying, let's stop real quick and think about, like, why is it that you're seeking this career change? Is it
Mhm.
something internal? Is it something like, because sometimes it'll turn out to be that your whole life is kind of in a little bit of a, it needs a pivot. And then we turn to the life coaching as opposed to the career coaching. So, I mean, that's kind of my biggest thing. I don't even know if that answered your question, but it's been
Yeah.
on my mind so much.
No, I definitely agree. The direction is important because
Yeah.
sometimes, especially with young people just jumping out of college into a career, they just want to say, I want to make the money, I want to
Yeah.
to find a position to support myself, and you end up 20 years later like, is this really where I want it to be? And then you find all the middle-aged people trying to reinvent their lives and all of that kind of stuff. So I truly believe, I had a conversation with one of my prayer group members this morning, and her daughter is just entering college, but she has all these plans and these goals. And I said, that is amazing, because now she gets to see, okay, this is what I want to do, and
Wow.
explore that to the fullest and be flexible in there. But having the direction allows
Yes.
her not to have to wander all over the place looking, searching, and trying to figure it out
Oh,
along the way.
absolutely.
So I love that.
Absolutely.
The vision, the Bible says, write the vision, make it plain,
Yes, there
right?
you go. Write the
So
vision, make it plain. And
that
to be honest,
vision,
this is the thing. Like, gosh, that reminds me so. When you said write the vision, make it plain, I was like, yes. And that's the thing. Like, we write the vision, we make it plain, right? But we also hold God sovereign in those pivots,
yes,
because in the
yes.
environment that we're in right now, I know my husband and I were talking, and he was like, well, I felt like God told me I'm going to be, this career, whatnot. And he's like walking through it. And when a challenge comes and the door is not open, he's like, oh, I didn't hear good. And I'm like, no, 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 let's not lose our faith over this. Like, that's not the case. I'm like, the road is not going to be straight If the road was
Mhm.
straight, that means God had nothing to teach you. You know what I mean? And so it was like one
Right.
of those things where, as he pivots, he's learning to listen to the voice of God. And then on a more practical standpoint, he's learning career agility, which is that whole
Mhm.
piece of we're in a such, I don't know how to explain it. The world is changing so quickly with the technology that we have that the job the kids nowadays, the students nowadays, are going to college for may not even be there when they graduate. That's how
Mhm.
quickly our world is turning. And to have the
Right.
ability to say, I'm going to be a lifelong learner, and if I go one way and the door is closed through technology or globalization or outsourcing or whatever that might be, then I'm going to pivot because I have lots of talents and qualities and I have an ability and a capacity to learn. And
Yes.
that capacity is what's going to take me. So the goal for me, and especially when I was teaching the classes, and now in the Uncommon Career Academy course, is like, let me show you that you can figure anything else out. So if
Mhm.
you go in one direction now, the goal is not just to get you the job at the end, but the goal is to make sure you have the skills so that in 5 years, if you don't want to do that job, you can pivot again. You can figure it out again for as many careers as you have, because I'm telling you, people are having like 10 careers. I kid you not,
Yeah.
10 careers
Yeah.
nowadays because of how quickly things are changing.
Yes. Yes. And not only how quickly things are changing, but also that in different seasons of our lives, we change.
Yes.
I myself have had a number of different. I started out as an attorney, and
Did
then
you?
yeah, I started out as an attorney.
What was your specialty?
2006. I specialized in business development. I worked with small business owners, nonprofit organizations, really helping them to get their messages into the world, helping them to grow and develop. So that's
That's
how I
amazing.
started. Then I was like, I don't want to be an attorney anymore. So I transitioned to being a certified life coach and speaker. I
Yes,
still
high
worked
five.
yeah, I still worked with entrepreneurs and small business owners, but I shifted what I did. Then I had a client say, "Hey, Benicia, can you help me write my book?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I transitioned to being a book coach and a
Wow.
publisher and all these things. So I've had many iterations of what I do and how I show up in the world. And so as I've changed, the I think the overarching vision has stayed the same, but the way that I go about it has been different. I still help people to share their messages with the world like I did when I was an attorney and a business development
Amen.
strategist, but it's just I don't write contracts or grants
Okay.
or business plans
Literally,
anymore, right?
Benicia, you are like the epitome of what I'm talking about. Like you have one vision or you have one mission.
Yeah,
Like you were made, you feel like you were made to do something.
right.
Okay,
Yeah.
like you kind of start to, it develops over time. It's not always going to stay exactly the same, but it's the same gist. You just kind of
Yeah.
evolve a little bit, right? But as you do that, you recognize that like the mission, your mission stays consistent, but your vision, like how you do it, it
Mhm.
started with law and business and then it went into coaching and now it's going into publishing, like, but your mission stays the same because it flows out of like who you are. Like
Mhm.
literally everything you're saying, I'm like, yes, you get it. Like you get it. So many folks just go in and they're like, oh, I picked accounting because it was on the list of majors. And I'm like, what? Like what?
Yes. Yeah. Well,
Gosh.
but talk to because I felt very disjointed along that journey. There were times right now looking back,
Yeah.
hindsight's 2020, right? I can look back and see how they all come together. But as I was shifting from one thing to the next, I
Yeah.
didn't necessarily feel that. I felt like I was just all over the place and I felt kind of lost at times. So what do you say to people when they are transitioning because you yourself are in that transition phase? How do you how do you coach people through the transition and help them to see the thread throughout all of all of their movements?
Yeah, gosh, that's such a great question. Okay, so, I know that you had mentioned like you were kind of lost at moments and figuring out like,
Mhm.
do I have a mission? Am I going in a
Yeah.
straight line? Because it doesn't feel like it. And my husband was going through the same thing where he was like, I thought I was meant to do something. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just floating around, right? It feels like you're just floating around. And he's like, this is what I like right now, but I don't feel like I'm going everywhere. And one of the things that I worked with him on, and I've worked with tons of clients, but I mean, he just comes to mind because, he's my husband.
Yeah.
But, and one of the things that always comes to mind every single time is like when you're in it, you're not looking at the map. You're
Yeah.
just walking the road, right? And so you
Mhm.
turn and you turn and you turn. And at some point, you don't know if you're going north, east, west, south, whatever. But if you were to take that, 50-foot view and you look at the map, now you're like, oh, even though I turned north and west and blah, 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 eventually, like the direction, like the general direction is
Mhm.
southeast or southwest
Right.
or whatever that case
Right.
is. But you can't see that general direction when you're going through it. And so one of the biggest things that I help my clients do is to figure out things like, who are you as a person? Like, what are your passions? What is your, what issues? Like, for example, you went into law for a reason. There was something that guided you. You could have done straight up, I don't know, music contract law. You could have
Yeah.
done immigration law. You could have done family law, right? There's all these different
Yeah.
avenues, but there's a reason why you felt there was an important issue in the small business arena. And so with all of these issues, there's emotions that are attached to it, and those emotions are obviously attached to you. And so part of who you are, you see those little glimpses of like, oh, why do I like publishing? Why do I like
Yeah.
this particular part of law? Why did coaching someone on their book? Why did I go for that? Because I could have said no, right? You could have,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
there's something that you were like, oh, I kind of want to try that. That sounds kind of cool, And as you get more experiences, it's kind of like you're going in this really, you're going way off base. But eventually,
Mhm.
over time, you start moving less and less and less and less. And eventually, it feels a little bit more like a straight line. So at the end of the day, if you're making decisions from knowing yourself, from having a self awareness and having a strong identity, knowing what you like, what you don't like,
Yeah.
making decisions based off what you want to do and what speaks to you, as opposed to maybe what mom and dad say or what society says is the biggest title or whatever. Then ultimately, no matter where you go, you're still on that same road of you, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to get there. And honestly, it's hard to say like this is magic pill, it's going to make you feel like you're going in a straight line, right? And that just
Yeah.
doesn't happen. But just
Right.
keeping it into perspective that it is the human way to not go in
Mhm.
a straight line, but you're going in a
Yeah.
general direction.
Yeah. And I like what you said a little bit earlier about allowing God to be sovereign
Amen.
and knowing that we have the vision, we have the plan, but then being flexible in that to hear from him to say, okay, well, lead me in that direction or take me in that, and not being so rigid. And I think that is the beauty of being able to transition and to go where God is directing and leading us in
Yeah.
so many different ways.
And
So
this is the thing, like, okay, I'm going to stop in a second here.
no,
but,
go, no, go
um,
ahead.
but one of the things when you're talking, what it reminds me of is like, we're always thinking that God's going to open the door to the outcome, to
Yeah,
the thing that we're supposed to finish at the end of our life. And God's like, well, you didn't realize that this life is just but a breath. Like, my goal is to prepare you eternally. So this,
yeah,
like, what you think is a detour is me cultivating your soul and your spirit. It's me challenging you to, like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
just grow this virtue in you. And if I don't see it growing in you by going in a straight line, which nobody learns anything unless they're challenged, right? When you do have those challenges, it's like, God, like,
Mhm.
what am I missing? What do you want me to develop? And sometimes we can't hear anything. We're like, I don't know. Sometimes it's just patience.
Yeah,
Sometimes
yes.
it's just patience.
That's a hard word.
It is a hard word. Don't ever pray for it because you'll get some lessons on patience for sure.
Oh, I have learned. Yes, I remember once, this is like so silly, but I remember praying for patience once. And the day after I prayed for patience, I had to go to the DMV. I was
That's a wrong
there.
prayer on the day you have to go to DMV.
I was there for like 3 hours. And I was like, really? And in that moment, it's so amazing. God was like, you prayed for patience. Here you go. Take some tea. I was like, oh my goodness.
He's like, the
But
word is thank you.
you're right.
The word
so
is thank
so
you.
I understand about, when you pray for patience, God will show you, okay, this is how you can have it. Here you go. You want patience? There you go.
Yeah.
But I think that he does that with so many of the areas in our lives, the things that we think are those DMV moments, if you will, those moments where we are in those frustrating situations,
Yeah.
but that's how God is getting the answer to our prayers to us through those challenges, like you say, through
Yeah.
those times when we have to, maybe we hear a no, maybe there's a rejection there, and God is showing us, hey, I have something better for you, or I'm teaching you how to increase your faith in me. There are
Yes.
so many lessons in each and every opportunity, and being able to experience God's divine direction in our professional lives
Yeah.
is key.
Oh
is
yeah.
key, especially with all the changes that happen. You mentioned technology. We talked about the pandemic. Just day to day changes.
Yeah.
We never know
We
what's
don't.
going to happen, but we have to just know that even in those things, God is still answering our prayers. He's still taking us in the way that will get us to, like you said, that eternal preparation.
Amen. Amen.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I love
Absolutely.
it. I love it. Yes. See, so those of you who are watching us and engaging with us, you can see exactly why I get so excited about having chats with the co authors from Divine Direction. Each of the co authors brought so much wisdom and insight
Yes.
into this project. And I just get so excited
There's some
about it.
amazing stories. Oh my goodness, there's some amazing
Yes.
stories.
Yes, and like I said, they all had that common theme woven throughout. It was like a beautiful tapestry of just how God shows up and does so many wonderful and amazing things. So, Patricia, one of the things that I wanted to accomplish with Divine Direction, or with the Inspirational Devotionals book project, as it was called up until the very end, um,
Yeah, yeah.
was to bring together people to share their stories. I wanted to be able to have people share, to bring light to others. But the other part of that was also to to encourage people to share their own stories. So tell the community about what inspired you to share your story, and what would you say to somebody who is thinking about sharing theirs?
Oh, yeah. Honestly, along the lines of what we've been talking about, is I got to a point where I was like, well, what is all this for? Like, why the struggles? Why this? Why that? And there's so many stories, and some are struggles and some are miracles and stuff. And so the story I shared happened to be like a happy, like this great thing happened. Um, this great, job opportunity happened. And I had to kind of like, in faith, let go of some big ticket jobs, knowing that God had the career that He had told me. Um, but the reason why I'm sharing it, yeah, the biggest reason why I'm sharing it is because one of the areas that I work in, I partnered with some groups that are focused on foster youth. And then I've also worked with women who are going through human trafficking. And so I had to figure out in my mind, I was like, I feel like I want to serve these women. And, you know, I'm coming through this place where I'm like, there's money to be made. Like money can be made, right? And money makes the dream happen. Like whether
Mhm.
we like it or not, it's not good, it's not evil, it's whatever you do with it. And so I'm like,
Right.
what if I could do something that could help everybody, not just those people that have a ton of money to buy a personal or buy to hire a
Yeah.
personal career coach, right? Like this is like $5,000, $3,000, $2,000. Like what if anybody could move up in their career using some of the strategies that I've learned? And then at the same time, if they can be part of something greater where some of the income that comes in from that is then, working to help those folks in that are aging out of foster care and those folks that are coming out of sexual exploitation and human trafficking. And so the overall goal, the big picture of sort of why I'm doing this is because number one, I want to help anybody and everybody recognize that they don't have to be, on survival mode in their career, or that they don't have to be in a career that they just don't like, that's just stressful and whatnot. While at the same time, having that community of folks be pitching into an even greater goal of helping foster who are aging out and those caught up in human trafficking that, we can help them transition out, and we can, basically it's sort of like partnering with those rescue organizations.
Yeah.
So that's like the big picture of, why I would even start to share my story. And then from sharing the story, then it was like, well, let's share all the techniques and tactics and, everything that I've learned through the master's degree and through the experience and all of that.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
kind of a long-winded answer, but that's kind of the overall mission.
Mm, absolutely. So for someone who's on the fence about or who's been holding on to their story for a long time, what would you tell them?
Oh my gosh, there's a reason why you went through whatever situation, good, bad, or indifferent. Like there's a reason, and God doesn't waste anything. Like this is the beautiful piece. Like even in the moments where I was just like, what the heck is going on? You know what I mean? Like there are some of those really dark moments, and
Yeah.
number one, those are the moments where you reach out to God the most, where you're the closest to God, or you have that opportunity to be the closest to God if you let Him in. And then number two, once you're on the other side of it, you're not the only one who went through that. And so, for the reason of camaraderie, common ground, connecting with someone on a deep, life experience, and more importantly than anything else, for taking that story that you went through and sharing it so that the person who's in that situation right now doesn't feel alone. Like,
Yeah.
that's the reason why we share stories, to kind of give life in our interactions. Because if we're just talking about what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going on in the news, but we don't share like what's happened with us and how we process it and all of those kinds of things, like, are you really sharing life? Like, and so to
Right.
me, sharing your story is sharing life. And so, you know, I always had this issue of like, oh, nobody wants to hear my story. That's so prideful. That's so da da da. But no, this is literally, somebody needs to hear it. Somebody needs
Mm.
to hear it to know what's possible for you to either, you know, like a miracle or a testimony or a difficult situation, to know it's possible that to move beyond it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
that is
Well,
so
there
good.
are more inspirational devotionals projects coming down the
Yes.
pipeline. So tell the community about your experience with the project. What were some of the things that you enjoyed about being a co-author?
Ah, okay. So, oh, geez. Honestly, the process, I mean, you had everything down to where it was just simple. And you didn't say, like, you're going to write this whole thing about, no, no, no. You had a form and you said, just tell me the gist of your story. And I hadn't really thought about it. And so I'm like,
Uh-huh.
okay, well, now I got to think about the gist of my story. So I put some work into that. And then you were like, oh, okay, now that you're doing, let's do the formal application and payment and all that kind of, all the logistics kind of stuff. But then you said, write a 300 word or something like that. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me take what I wrote and develop a little bit more. And so, like, through the process, it was like you had like these little crumbs, and I was like, yes, 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 like little by little, which was really, really cool. And then, when it came time to be like, okay, now, you've got, I don't remember if it was 1, 2, or 3 months, but you've got a certain amount of time. Send me your actual draft. You sent us to this. You sent us to this like PDF document.
Mhm.
I still have it. I still have it, Benicia, and
Okay.
it's helped me a lot in other ventures. But
Awesome.
you like got everything down to like, what's the hook, what's the problem. Like you drew out the story and you
Yeah.
kind of put it in a way that is not just a story, but it's also in like this devotional format. Oh my gosh. That helped me to like structure the story. I would have been all over the place if you hadn't provided that. So that was super helpful. And then you even offered a phone call. You were like, hey, give me, schedule a call. And so when I talked to you and you kind of gave me like, let's just say this, like on the mindset side, you like eased my worries and
Oh,
you eased my nervousness and my fears to where I was like, oh, I'm just writing. I'm just writing. Before it was like, you have to be perfect. You have to, da, 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 da.
yeah.
And then I talked to you and I'm like, no, this is what every book is. This is just you writing, like you just talking to someone. And that made it a lot easier. And to be honest, even the editing process was really cool. Like to see the editor's changes, to be able to say, oh, yes, let me fix that part, or let me, add this that, you asked for or whatnot. Um, I think it was a really smooth process to get a great story out, even for me, who I'm not a writer whatsoever. So if you're a writer, if you're not a writer, if you're not a writer, trust me, this is a great way to get started. So that was one of them, and then the other piece was the just knowing how the process works. It was incredibly helpful. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that is cool. I love that. That's one of the things I definitely wanted to incorporate in the project is helping people to feel comfortable and empowered sharing their stories. It's not a rocket science, if you will, because
Mm-hmm.
we connect with stories, and we don't have to use $10 words to connect. We can
Thank you.
speak.
Yeah.
Right? And nobody wants to hear those $10 words anyway. It's like, am I in a lecture or what? No, you want
Yeah.
to be able to connect. And so, what I loved about just this whole process is that you all shared your stories from the heart and connected on a real level. This
Yeah.
is not was not an academic experience. It was
No.
not something where you have to know all the ways to dot your I's and cross your T's. That's why we have the
Yeah.
editors for that. But to just get your story on the page and share your heart is the best thing ever. So thank
Yeah.
you
It
so
was
much
amazing.
for that. Now, is there anything else before we wrap up? I want you to you are sharing about how God just directs us in our careers.
Mhm.
And if someone is dealing with a transition or they're up in arms about where do I do with my career, what would you say to them, and how can they connect with you?
I think what keeps coming up for me is just, you know, reminding folks that, God created you a certain way in your mother's womb well before you even knew what was what, and as you're going through life, the way he created you is on purpose.
Right.
And that purpose, there's works, I think it's, I don't want to say which book because I'm going to get it wrong, but there's works that God planned for you to do
Mhm.
ahead of time. And he
Yes.
created you with that purpose and those works in mind. And so it's a journey to find, like, God, where do you want me? What do you want me to do in this short time that we have on earth? And I think that's the biggest thing I would say. Like, outside of the resume and the interview and all that, it's figuring out who are you, what you were meant to do, and let's help you do that. Sometimes it's the focus on the career and that's where it's geared towards, but sometimes it's not. So, how do we get you a career and how do we help you find clarity and what you're going to do on the day to day that's going to support what God is has created you for? And so everyone has something special they're created for. So don't minimize or try to be generic or try to fit in. Like, be who you are, because when you're who you are, you're going to get to where you need to go. So that's the biggest one that it's just been on my heart forever, where we just blend in,
Yeah.
and we weren't meant to blend in. We weren't meant to blend in. So that's the biggest thing I would
Yes.
say is to start there. And then as far as like where to reach me, is that where we're at?
Yes. How can
Yeah.
they, if someone needs you and they need your services to help them navigate their career choices?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website is called theuncommoncareer.com. And on there, you'll find everything that's being offered. Things are evolving. There's like a course, a membership, there's one on one coaching, depending on your price range and just what the kind of experience that you want. But yeah, everything's there at theuncommoncareeracademy.com. And there is a podcast coming out very soon, and that'll be the Uncommon Career podcast.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thank you
Oh,
so much for
I think I
Patricia.
need to make a. I think
Go ahead.
nope. I had a. I think I need to make a correction. I said the Uncommon Career Academy. That's the course. The website
Okay.
you want to go to, the website you
Yes.
want to go to is theuncommoncareer.com. That is the main website where everything lives. And then the podcast
Awesome.
is the Uncommon Career Podcast.
Awesome. So theuncommoncareer.com. Let's get that. We have to get that right.
I
And
know.
we will have a link to that website in the description and
Thank
you'll
you.
be able to click on it. So but theuncommoncareer.com. I'm excited. I know that you are doing some amazing work, not only in helping others, but God is doing an amazing work in you as you're
Amen.
transitioning to do just wonderful things. So thank you so
And with the,
much.
I mean, with everything that you're doing, I just know it's going to bring life to so many people. So I just want to thank you for
Thank
just
you.
not only doing it once, but now saying I work with all these crazy people. Now I'm going to do it again.
It wasn't too crazy because I'm willing to do it again. But it
Awesome.
definitely a great experience, and that's the goal: is to spread light and love, and just help other people to realize, number one, you're not alone,
Yeah.
and also realize that you have something that someone else needs. So it's a catalyst. It's a pay it forward kind of thing. So
Yes.
so the people who are in our community who have been inspired and impacted by the amazing authors through divine direction, now I challenge you to step up. I challenge you to share that story that you've been holding on inside of you. You'll hear about the call for authors pretty soon, but just start thinking about how can you shine your light in this world. So Patricia,
Amen.
thank you so much for sharing with our community. We'll make sure to check you out at theuncommoncareer.com. Did I get it right?
Yes, you
Yes.
did.
theuncommoncareer.com. And thank you all for joining us in this author interview, in our Divine Direction author interview series. All of them are available. You can also go to inspirationalauthors.com. They're going to be there right there on the blog for you to check out all of the interviews in this series. But I'm excited. I'm excited about what we're doing, and I invite you to continue along the journey. I'm Benicia Ponder from inspirationalauthors.com. And as we close, I want you to remember this: you are the light of the world, and it's time for you to let your light shine. Bye bye.